Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're jumping into a set of sources you provided. They all center around a speech by Mr. Ash Mufari about ONPASSIVE's mission. Specifically, its, potential impact in Nigeria.
That's right. And our aim for this deep dive is really to unpack the key points from these sources, understand the vision being presented, and see what it tells us about ONPASSIVE's focus on Nigeria.
More than just a summary, getting into the message itself.
Exactly. What's the deeper significance here?
Okay, let's unpack this then. We're looking at summaries, key excerpts from this speech.
Yeah, and the context is pretty striking right off the bat. According to the sources, this speech happened in Nigeria, specifically on their 62nd Independence Day.
Wow, okay. So that sets a particular stage.
Definitely. The sources say it opens with greetings, acknowledging the importance of the day, celebrating it.
Standard enough to start.
But then almost immediately, the summary suggests it pivots. While celebrating, it also apparently highlights what the speaker sees as failures in various systems within Nigeria.
Interesting. So acknowledging the pride, but also sort of the unmet potential or challenges.
Precisely. It sets up this dynamic potential despite problems. And the sources say Mr. Mufara expressed a real commitment to making a positive impact.
And framed Nigeria as critical for Africa's future.
Yes, absolutely critical. There's even specific language noted in the sources praising the potential of the Nigerian people themselves. The message seemed pretty direct. Any big plans for Africa have to include Nigeria.
Okay. So pride, potential, but facing challenges squarely.
Which leads us right into the next theme that comes through in the source material.
Okay.
Identifying those ongoing struggles.
And the summary doesn't mince words, does it? It points to things like corruption, security.
Yeah, explicitly mentioned according to the report. And it's right at this point that ONPASSIVE is brought in.
Oh, okay.
And not just as an idea, but presented as having existing solutions ready to potentially tackle some of these issues in Nigeria.
Right. This is where it gets really specific based on the notes provided. The sources pinpoint particular areas ONPASSIVE is targeting. Education is one, right? Revolutionizing it.
That's highlighted as a primary commitment. And it's framed as a path to, overall societal improvement. Big goals.
And not just education in isolation.
No. The summary stressed that enhancing the financial system was just as vital and needed to happen alongside educational reform. It's presented as this integrated approach.
An integrated transformation. And the sources make a point about the type of solution, don't they?
They do. It's emphasized that the speech wasn't talking about quick fixes, not temporary stuff.
Like Band-Aids?
Exactly. It called for sustainable, lasting solutions. It even specifically mentioned moving past ideas like crowdfunding, which seemed to be dismissed as, not enough for deep change.
Okay, so the focus is clearly on systemic foundational shifts, not just patching things up.
That's a really key takeaway from the sources, yeah.
And this ambition for deep impact, it seems to feed into the vision part described. Nigeria wasn't just another market possibility.
Apparently not. The sources state Nigeria was identified as a definite priority for launching what the speech called life-changing products and innovations.
Life-changing, that's quite a claim.
It really underlines the scale of the vision being communicated. And again, it brings us back to education. Revolutionizing the educational system is repeatedly flagged as a key target for this impact.
But not the only target.
No, the source material suggests the speech indicated other sectors would benefit too, like a ripple effect from these innovations.
Okay, so connecting this bigger picture,
yeah,
the sources mention some powerful language used in the speech about achieving true independence.
Yes, true independence and a paradigm shift for Nigeria, directly linking these big ideas to the ONPASSIVE initiative.
True independence, that's loaded, especially given the Independence Day context.
Yeah.
What do the sources suggest that actually means in this framing?
Well, it seems framed through this combination of technological and economic transformation, but it's not purely tech-driven.
Okay.
The speech, according to the sources, also really recognized the talented, educated people in Nigeria. They weren't just passive recipients.
Right. They were positioned as key contributors to making it all work.
Essential contributors, yeah. So building it with Nigerians, not just for them. That seems to be the message.
That's an important distinction.
And there's this really striking phrase captured. ONPASSIVE's arrival in Nigeria is presented almost as a catalyst for true freedom and independence.
A catalyst, like the spark needed to achieve something deeper than just formal independence.
Exactly, building on that foundation. And the sources also report this belief was stated that success in Nigeria specifically would be critical for ONPASSIVE's own global success as a company.
Which circles back to that priority status we talked about.
It really reinforces it, and this belief was apparently coupled with a commitment, also noted in the sources, that their actions would be driven by this intense determination to succeed there.
This level of ambition, this focus on true independence, it sounds like it must lead towards a call to action. How did the speech frame that, according to the sources?
It really seems to center the effort on the Nigerian people themselves. The source material highlights a strong emphasis on unity being absolutely essential to achieve the mission.
And there was a personal touch mentioned, too. The speaker calling himself a brother.
Yeah, reportedly introducing himself that way, pledging positive changes, creating that connection.
But the core message about who drives the change.
The core assertion, strongly highlighted in the sources, is that real change must come from the people.
Okay.
And this was reportedly contrasted explicitly with relying on, say, traditional authorities or regimes. The speech seemed to frame those as maybe sources of past failures or stagnation.
So positioning this as something separate from, or maybe even bypassing, the usual political channels, a kind of grassroots movement.
That seems to be the implication. The sources point to this call for collective support, for determination, urging people to work hard. It even apparently dismissed past failures by suggesting it was just a lack of sufficient effort, not, impossible problems.
Interesting framing.
And the conclusion drawn from this line of argument, as reported, is that ONPASSIVE is presented as this necessary shift towards effective solutions for Nigeria.
A necessary shift, powered by the people. That definitely adds a sense of urgency, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The sources convey a real sense of urgency from the speech, like a concern that if ONPASSIVE doesn't succeed in Nigeria, the country risks falling back into old cycles of stagnation.
The stakes are framed incredibly high then.
Very high. The speech reportedly stressed that making ONPASSIVE work is necessary specifically for Nigeria, framing its success as vital for the nation's whole future.
Wow. That's a lot to put on one initiative.
It is. And this call for immediate action was paired with a pretty powerful statement reported in the sources that the next generation is relying on their efforts.
Directly linking it to the future for young Nigerians. That's a heavy responsibility to place on the audience.
It certainly is. And interestingly, the sources mention that in the same context, the speech included a warning.
Against what?
Against trusting politicians, which, again, reinforces that idea of this being presented as an alternative path, maybe outside the established political system.
Okay, so urgency, high stakes, a people-driven approach, skepticism towards politics.
Right. And while the sources mention excitement being described around ONPASSIVE,
Yes.
the speech also apparently balanced that by stressing that a lot of hard work is still needed in Nigeria to make these goals a reality. It wasn't pitched as, a guaranteed win or an easy road.
Got it. So manage expectations alongside the excitement. Hard work is key.
Exactly. And finally, the sources mention one more thing, that while they couldn't reveal all the details, a strategic plan is supposedly in place.
And that plan?
It reportedly prioritizes success in Nigeria, even over potentially easier markets elsewhere.
Okay, even if other places might seem like quicker wins, Nigeria comes first.
That's the message conveyed in the sources, yeah. It really hammers home how central Nigeria is painted in this whole vision and plan described in the speech. It's not just a market, it's framed as the priority.
So let's try to synthesize this. What does it all add up to?
Well, based purely on the source material you shared, we've dived into a speech outlining a really ambitious vision for Nigeria. It's centered on using ONPASSIVE solutions, especially in education and finance. Those were highlighted to drive systemic, sustainable change.
And we heard how the speech frames this not merely as a corporate project, but as a movement, a people-driven effort calling for unity, aiming for this idea of true independence.
Yeah, and we definitely pick up on that strong sense of urgency reported in the sources, plus the strategic commitment. Nigeria being explicitly named as the priority, crucial for the company's wider success, even if it's the harder path.
So looking just at these sources, Nigeria is presented as absolutely pivotal to ONPASSIVE's mission and its future, according to this speech.
Which leaves us, and you, with a pretty interesting question to chew on. When a global initiative positions itself as a catalyst for technological and economic transformation, how does that potentially redefine what true independence means for a nation?
Especially when that vision is explicitly tied, as the sources suggest it was, to the efforts and hopes of the next generation.
Something to think about until our next deep dive.
Okay, let's dive in. We've got this stack of material you provided, articles, research notes, quite a mix.
Yeah, all focused on ONPASSIVE, and this other name, OnFusion.
Right. Try and figure out what's really going on, especially looking at, June 2025.
Cutting through some of the chatter, maybe.
Exactly. So our goal here, just using what you've given us, what's the actual situation, is ONPASSIVE launching anything in June 2025?
And, well, based purely on these sources, the answer is a pretty clear no.
No, really?
No official launch plan for ONPASSIVE itself in June 2025. That's what this material indicates.
Huh. But there's so much talk. Why? Why do the sources say no launch? What's the reason given?
So the documents here, they point to a pretty big change. They suggest the original ONPASSIVE entity was formally wound down.
Wound down.
Yeah, ceased operations. Seems like that happened early in 2025.
So it's not just quiet, it's actually stopped as a functioning thing.
That seems to be the picture from these sources, and it looks like it was, well, effectively replaced.
Replaced by what?
By this new entity mentioned, ONFusion, which, according to this, is led by Ashraf Mufarah.
Okay, ONFusion. And is it just a name change or?
No, the material you shared really stresses that ONFusion is different, a distinct structure.
How so?
Well, crucially, it says ONFusion has no legal obligation, none, to honor the old ONPASSIVE agreements.
Like commissions and stuff?
Exactly. The original commission structures, founder agreements. This material says ONFusion isn't bound by them.
Wow. Okay. That's significant. Now, there's another big piece in here too, right? The legal angle.
Yes, absolutely. The sources highlight an active civil case. It's the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, against ONPASSIVE and Ashraf Mufarah.
An SEC case.
And the timing.
Uh-huh. That's key. The material points to a specific trial date set for June 2nd, 2025.
June 2nd, so right at the start of the month we're asking about.
Precisely. And these documents also mention that discovery, depositions, gathering evidence, testimony, that was already happening leading up to this date, including from leadership council members. Okay, let me try and connect these dots just based on your sources. ONPASSIVE itself is wound down.
Check.
Replaced by ONFusion, a new structure, no ties to old deals.
That's what it says, yes.
And the main figure, Mufarah, is heading into an SEC trial literally on June 2nd.
Correct.
Yet, we still see things circulating, right? Like internal updates, good news coming June 1st, or videos for founders. How do the sources explain that contrast?
Yeah, that's where you have to be careful, according to this material. Those internal updates, they're happening. That seems clear.
But
the sources provide zero credible confirmation of any actual concrete launch plans for June 2025. Not for ONPASSIVE, which seems defunct anyway, and not even confirmed for ONFusion.
So the internal buzz isn't matching any, official public roadmap described here.
Doesn't seem like it, no. These updates aren't tied to verifiable public announcements or clear product plans in the documentation we're looking at.
Okay, so let's try and summarize the picture for June 2025, sticking only to what this material tells us.
All right. According to these sources, 1, ONPASSIVE is discontinued, wound down, no active development, no product release planned, it's retired.
Got it, too.
2, ONFusion is the new game in town under Mufarah, but it operates separately, and crucially, the documentation shows no public launch, certainly not in June, for anything ONPASSIVE branded.
Right, and the big one.
3, the legal situation. That SEC trial starting June 2nd, the sources flag this as ongoing litigation, a major factor potentially impacting, well, everything. Operations, plans, the works.
So if you're trying to follow this based on the sources, what should you actually be watching for?
Well, first and foremost, developments around that June 2nd SEC trial date. What happens there seems critical based on this.
Makes sense.
What else? Look for official formal announcements from ONFusion, not just internal chat. Actual press releases, something verifiable about their future plans.
And maybe a word of caution based on this material.
Yeah, definitely. Be cautious about those unverified internal updates or webinars, unless they clearly connect to something ONFusion publicly describes and verifies in credible documents.
They probably don't mean a public launch is imminent.
That's the strong suggestion from these sources, yes. No credible sign of an ONPASSIVE launch in June 2025.
Okay, so let's wrap this deep dive. Based purely on the material you provided, ONPASSIVE seems retired, inactive, no June 2025 launch plans there.
Right. The focus really shifts to this new ONFusion entity.
And it's all happening with this significant SEC legal case hanging over it, trial starting June 2nd.
Exactly. Which leaves us with a pretty potent question to think about, drawn straight from the situation described in these sources.
Go on.
Given that SEC trial is set for June 2nd, with all the pretrial activity already done, what could the immediate outcome, or even just the developments in that case, actually mean for Enfusion? For its future direction, any plans it might have, and especially the timing.
How does that legal process affect the new entity's path forward? That's definitely something to watch. Thanks for bringing these sources in so we can piece this together. Okay, let's get into this. We're doing a deep dive today into source material presenting ONPASSIVE, and it's framed as, well, a pretty major revolutionary force using AI.
Yeah, revolutionary is definitely the word the source uses. It doesn't hold back, framing it as something really significant, even, suggesting it's coming fast to save draining humanity.
Coming fast to save draining humanity. Wow, that's quite a statement. It really grabs your attention.
It does.
So our goal here is really to unpack what this source material is telling us about ONPASSIVE's mission, its tech, and, well, the kind of impact it claims it's going to have, both on people individually and maybe bigger global issues.
Exactly. We're focusing on the claims the source itself puts forward, especially that idea of why it's supposedly arriving so quickly to tackle what it terms draining humanity.
Okay. So the material introduces ONPASSIVE, mentions Ashmur Faria as the leader, and says it's using AI to, quote, reshape and save lives. How exactly does the source say it's doing that?
Well, it really highlights these AI-driven solutions. The claim is they're designed to tackle global challenges head-on. Things like financial instability, problems accessing digital tools.
Right, the digital divide kind of thing.
Sort of, yeah. And also economic disparity. That's what the source points to.
And it gets specific, too, doesn't it? The source mentions a whole ecosystem of tools. I saw OConnect mentioned.
Described as a communication platform.
And OWallet. That sounds financial.
Yeah, the material presents that as providing financial security. And then there's OStaff, which is framed more around business automation.
Okay, so communication, finance, automation. The source seems to position these as tools for empowerment, sustainable solutions.
That's definitely the angle. Empowerment is key in the source's narrative here. And a big part of that is how it claims ONPASSIVE is like reshaping the digital economy.
Which connects to another point in the source, right? That a lot of people, maybe small businesses especially, find it really tough online.
Exactly. That's the problem the source sets up. And then it presents ONPASSIVE's solution, this done-for-you AI business model. The suggestion is, anyone can potentially earn passively through this.
That's a big promise, a done-for-you passive income model.
It is. And what the source really hammers home is getting rid of those tech barriers.
Yeah.
It suggests, that sophisticated tools are usually just for the big players, leaving everyone else behind.
Ah, okay. So ONPASSIVE is presented as the equalizer.
Pretty much. The source uses the term democratizing technology, making things like advanced marketing, automation, security available to everybody, creating what it calls equal opportunity.
That fairness and access idea, it seems pretty central to the source material's description. And it also talks a lot about the leadership, about Ashmur Faria.
It does. Describes his vision as mission-driven. The focus, according to the source, isn't just profit. It's about uplifting humanity. It talks about ethical AI, fairness, transparency, asserting that people come before profits in this ecosystem.
People before profits.
Right.
And the source links that to ONPASSIVE being this, comprehensive digital hub, right? A one-stop shop.
Yeah, exactly. It lists other tools too. OChat for AI messaging, OVirtual, which the source connects to security, OPeer for collaboration.
OCreate for websites, maybe?
That's right, website building. The claim is that all these tools work together to simplify things, boost security, automate tasks so users can, focus on other things.
And it's not just business or personal tools. The source mentions a wider impact too, some kind of foundation.
Yes, the ONPASSIVE Foundation. The material says it supports things like education, healthcare, sustainability projects. So broader humanitarian efforts are part of the picture painted by the source.
Okay, so if you pull all those threads together from the source material, it's painting a picture of a really broad, all-encompassing effort.
Definitely. A very comprehensive vision described there.
Which the source itself ends up calling the ONPASSIVE revolution. It's quite explicit, saying through automation, AI, this all-in-one approach, it's rescuing draining lives, offering financial freedom, digital empowerment, automated business.
Right. And the source even points to the speed of its growth as proof that people are hungry for this kind of change.
Suggesting it's delivering this transformation at, what was the phrase? Lightning speed?
Lightning speed, yeah, that's how the source puts it. Very confident assertion.
Okay, so let's just quickly recap the main picture we got from this source material. We heard about AI solutions for global issues, this ecosystem of tools, OConnect, OWallet, OStaff, OChat, OVirtual, OPeer, OCreate.
And the claims about democratizing technology, making it accessible, plus that done-for-you passive earning model.
Right, and the humanitarian side through the foundation.
And tying it all together, the source's emphasis on a mission-driven leadership that it says puts people first.
So ultimately, the source suggests this whole thing is aimed at offering you, the listener, things like financial freedom, digital empowerment, and business automation.
Which, looking at everything the source presents, it does leave you with a thought. Given this description of transformation happening at lightning speed, what could the wider implications be? How might technology, presented in this way, potentially reshape economies, reshape lives? It's certainly something to think about based on what this material suggests. Welcome to the deep dive. We've got quite a stack of sources today, all focusing on one core piece of the ONPASSIVE world, the O-Wallet, and its whole payment ecosystem.
That's right. And our job here really is to dig into this material you shared and figure out what this internal digital payment thing actually is, how it works, its main features, and maybe most importantly, the kind of strategic thinking behind it all.
Yeah, get straight to the core insights.
Exactly. Not just a feature list.
Okay. And right away, the sources frame O-Wallet as like the absolute center, the main payment processor. They even use the phrase central nervous system for ONPASSIVE's finances, all under CEO Ash Mufareh. Sounds pretty foundational.
Oh, it absolutely is. And thinking of it like that, like a nervous system, really highlights how it's meant to touch, almost every financial part of the ecosystem.
Integrated, not separate.
Precisely. That seems to be the design philosophy.
Okay, so let's start right there, the core system. What are the key things the sources highlight that make it the central piece?
Well, a big one they push is the AI. They talk about AI-powered transactions. So the idea is it's not just moving money, it's using smart algorithms that watch patterns, learn, and adapt.
AI watching the money flow. Why exactly?
Mostly for spotting fraud, seems like, and also for optimizing how transactions happen. The AI could potentially see weird stuff faster than, old school rule systems.
Okay, fraud detection makes sense. And smoothing things out.
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is how that AI capability sort of branches out.
How do you mean?
Well, it's built for global use right from the start, multi-currency support. And this isn't just showing different currency symbols. It's about actually handling transactions in various currencies globally.
Which you'd need for cross-border stuff.
Essential for that kind of scalability, yeah. It seems engineered to be international from day one.
Right. And for a global platform, that tracks. What about keeping it all locked down, security?
Security is obviously huge. The sources talk about, standard but critical things.
Yeah.
Two-factor authentication, the extra code beyond your password.
Yep, 2FA. Standard, but you got to have it.
Absolutely. And biometric security options, too, for logging in. Fingerprint, face, that kind of thing.
Okay. And once you're verified and in the system, how quick are the payments inside ONPASSIVE?
For transfers between users within the ecosystem, they're described as instant transfers.
Yeah.
So the goal is real-time, immediate movement of funds.
Instant inside the network. Got it. Now, compliance. That's massive for anything touching money today.
Non-negotiable, really. OWallet is apparently integrated directly with ONPASSIVE's own O-Verify system.
O-Verify. That's their identity check tool.
Exactly. It handles the Know Your Customer, the KYC to check who people are, and the anti-money laundering AML checks. It sounds like verification is baked right into signing up and using it.
Building verification simplifies things, but adds that necessary friction up front. Okay, we mentioned central nervous system. This is where it gets really interesting for me. How does O-Wallet actually connect to all the other ONPASSIVE tools?
Yeah, this is probably one of the biggest takeaways from the material.
Yeah.
The sources really stress that O-Wallet isn't separate. It's explicitly designed to link up with, almost everything else in their suite.
The financial plumbing connecting everything?
Kinda, yeah. The backbone connecting different apps.
Can you give us some specific examples? Like, how does it work with different products?
Okay, yeah, let's trace some connections. Take OShop, their e-commerce thing. O-Wallet isn't just one payment method. It's presented as the main way it handles checkouts for buyers and payouts to sellers.
Okay, so core to the marketplace.
Seems like it. Then for Odesk, their freelance platform. It's used for paying freelancers, obviously, but also for managing project escrow.
Holding the money until the work's proved.
Right, which is key for trust in those kinds of marketplaces.
Definitely. What about things like webinars or events?
So for OConnect, their webinar tool, OWallet is supposed to process payments for things like, say, pay-to-attend webinars or maybe selling tickets.
Okay.
And OBooking, which seems to be for scheduling like hotels or tours, it's used for making the payments for those bookings directly.
And subscription tools, like their analytics.
Yep, OTracker, the analytics tool, uses OWallet for billing its subscriptions, and OMail, which apparently has ways to monetize email campaigns, OWallet would handle those transactions too.
Wow. So buying, hiring, hosting, booking, subscribing, marketing. If it involves money inside ONPASSIVE, OWallet is meant to be there.
That's the picture painted. Yes, it aims to be the transaction layer for the whole digital environment.
That integration is huge.
Yeah.
Okay, let's circle back to the AI we talked about earlier. How does it do more than just basic transaction processing? What about insights?
Right. The AI seems to have a broader role. They talk about smart contracts and conditional releases. So AI logic could potentially automate releasing funds only when certain conditions are met.
Like what?
Well, imagine payment for a freelance job only getting released after the system verifies the task is done somehow. Or maybe handling complex escrow rules automatically.
Automated conditional payments. That could handle some tricky situations. What about insights for the users themselves? Does it tell you anything?
Yeah, it mentions transaction insights. The AI analyzes your activity within a wallet to give you reports, show spending trends, maybe even offer forecasts based on your habits.
Huh. Like a mini financial advisor based on your OWallet history.
Sort of, yeah, but focus just on the data inside the ecosystem. They specifically mentioned spending behavior tracking with personalized AI reports, trying to help users see where their money's going and, maybe spend or save better within that on and passive world.
That level of tracking, even just for optimization, it highlights how much data the system is designed to handle.
Okay, shifting focus a bit. Global reach. We touched on it, but let's dig into the borderless idea, interoperability, and the whole regulatory side. The design is definitely framed as global first, aiming to make transactions feel borderless, at least within the system.
And currencies, just regular money or more.
Both, it seems. It supports traditional fiat currencies, obviously, but also other digital currencies. And interestingly, the sources explicitly say they're exploring future integration with major cryptocurrencies.
Ah, so crypto is on the roadmap. That's a big step if it happens.
Signals an intent to connect to that wider digital asset world, yeah.
What about businesses outside ONPASSIVE wanting to use this? Any way for them to plug in?
They mentioned merchant tools, APIs, and SDKs specifically. These are the technical bits that would let external websites or apps potentially embed OWallet for payments.
Okay, so developer tools to potentially let others use it, extending its reach.
That seems to be the idea, yeah, not purely internal.
And how does it connect to the traditional banking system around the world, getting money in and out?
The sources mention talks or actual implementations with banks, particularly pointing to Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. This is pretty vital for fiat settlement, turning the digital balance into actual money in a local bank account.
Yeah, you need those on-ramps and off-ramps.
It suggests they're working on bridging that gap with existing financial infrastructure.
Makes sense. Let's revisit compliance, but maybe with more specifics. What global standards are they aiming for?
They list some key acronyms, suggesting they're aiming for broad compliance. GDPR is mentioned. That's the big European data privacy law.
Right, data protection.
And PCI DSS, that's the standard for handling credit card data securely.
Card security, got it.
And frameworks like FinCEN, which is US-focused, and FATF, which is global, both are about fighting money laundering and financial crime.
So data, cards, and financial crime prevention.